Okay, welcome to this video. We will now start working on our entities. So we will use our DTOs and read models to convert them into real entities that we could probably save into a real database, or which we could potentially use in a real database, or at least in entity framework, for example, in memory databases. However, I really want to mention that these DTOs and read models and entities, all of this is really expert knowledge. So there are a lot of web developers out there which are just completely ignoring that, right? They simply go ahead and write entities and send those entities directly from A to B and from B to A and all over the network. However, this is really not the best practice. The best practice by far is to create data transfer objects which are just for sending them through different applications. But when it comes to real usage of the information, like a real entity, for example, a user or a book flight information or any other model that you would use in your application, you really want to keep them separate as completely separated entities. So just to get that clear, if you send the information about the flight between applications, you would use a flight read model. But if you want to store the information about a flight, you would use a flight model, even if they have nearly the same or exactly the same information covered. And this is what we call the domain layer. And you really want to make use of it to be a very professional web developer. Now let's start in our application, in our project here. Let's add a new folder. Right click on flights, add a new folder and call it domain. If you take a look at existing applications during your career, you will see that a lot of projects will have that structure. Either they have a domain folder or they will have a separate domain project. Now inside that domain folder, right click and add a new folder and call it entities. Now let's copy over our read model. So open up read models and let's start with the flight read model. So I will open up real quick here. Now right click on that, hit copy. So Control C, right? I will do it here in the drop downs. Now go to the entities folder, right click on it and simply paste. You can now see the flight read model as a duplicate here inside the entities folder. Now I will close what's opened here. Go ahead and open the flight read model in the entities folder since we have to adjust it. We for sure don't want to have a copy. You can see we got a compilation error because now we have that flight read model 2 times, right? Now let's first of all change the namespace from flights read models to flights.domain.entities. We can save it. For sure he's complaining about time place rm missing. Now let's do that. Time place rm, select it in the read models folder, simply copy it and then go back to entities folder, right click and paste it. So now we have that duplicate here too. Open it up, time place read model from the domain entities folder and change it here to flights.domain.entities2. Now you can see that it's here for sure resolved because we now have time place rm in flights domain entities. So just to make that clear, right now at this point we have a folder called domain and a folder inside that called entities, and inside there we have again flight read model and flight time place read model. So right now we have 2 times the read models, flight read model here, flight read model here, time place read model here, and time place read model here. Now later on inside of our domain entities, we will change the name of those read models, but right now we stick with it. Let's try out if everything worked. So go ahead and start your application. This should prove you that you have no compilations error. That should prove you that you have no compilation errors. So this is just a test for us to see if we made any mistakes right now. Great, so the application is starting, and as you can see, we have no compilation errors, so we can stop the application and continue from here. Now we need to refactor. Refactor means that we change all the references. So flight read model, we want to refactor it to be called flight rm. And by refactoring, we remove all the references. However, if you right click on it, you go to find all references, you can see that we don't have a reference, right? Because those domain entities, we just created them and they are not referenced. The ones which are referenced are those from the read models folder. So right click on flight rm, click on rename and simply go ahead and remove rm, so simply call it flight. Now hit apply and you can see that also the file name changed to flight.cs instead of flight rmcs. So this is very important. Now don't go ahead and simply well, remove the name and write down the new name. Make sure to make right click and then click on rename to really adjust all the references and the file name. We exactly do the same thing for time place rm. So select time place rm, make sure you're selecting the correct one from the domain entities folder, right click on it, rename, and again write down time place. Now hit apply, and you will also see that the name got adjusted to timeplace.cs. Now, as you can see, those are our entities from our domain, and if we want to write down something into a database or want to use them in our application, we would now go ahead and use time, place, and flight. So if you want to save something to a database, let me say that again, you would not use flight read model anymore. You would now use flight, even though they are completely identical from the setup or from the definitions, right? So flight is now what we want to use when it comes to database, etc. And if we would just send information about flights, you would still go ahead and use the flight read model to send them from a front end to a back end to a mobile application or whatever. So for transferring information, use the flight read model. For storing data, use the flight model. This is important. DTOs and entities. Data transfer objects and entities for permanent and persistent storage. Okay, so this is the first step. And as I said, inside of our controllers, we now really want to decide where we use the flight and the flight read model, right? So we have to adjust some variables and endpoints to make use of the correct entities now.